This is Full Steam, a series that profiles the best and brightest brains from the Irish tech scene, all of whom just happen to be women. My guest today is Cathriona Hallahan, the MD of Microsoft Ireland. We'll hear how she opted to not go to college, fell into Microsoft and is now leading the company. So we know you as the MD of Microsoft. You've been there for quite a long time now, but I want to start by talking about your childhood. I know you grew up in Stillorgan, which is not far from where we are now in Dublin. What was your family life like when you were a child?
So I grew up in a family, two older brothers, and I was of course the baby and the only girl, so you can imagine a little bit spoilt and looked after. Working class family, so my dad was a motor mechanic, mother was a housewife. She had come from a family of 15, so her mother had passed away when she was only 13. So my mum was taken out of school life to become the housekeeper at home and look after all her brothers and sisters. And I tell you that because it has kind of a relevance to as I got older. So really happy life, very well looked after, very well loved. And then when I was 10, my dad had a brain hemorrhage and passed away quite suddenly. So he was only 42, so quite a young man. He was the kind of manager of my brother's football club, and we used to go on Sundays, load up the car. My older brother hated football, so he would never come with us. But my dad, my mum, myself and my other brother used to go with carloads of guys. And again, I would say I was a tomboy because I was always with boys. And go to the football match. And this particular Sunday, he drove two carloads of us, myself, my mum in one of them, and my brother and his friends in another, up to the match. And he was writing out the list for the referee of the players, and he collapsed and died instantly.
Oh my God.
So a huge shock for the family, huge shock for my mum. She was left with 3 children under 13 and no career. So for her, she had to think about, well, what do I do now? And she went and started doing housework for other people because that was the only skill set that she had, because she'd been the housekeeper at home. And then over the years she set up a small cleaning business with her friend and went into industrial cleaning, cleaning schools and other things. So a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit in her. And then also my dad had his own business as a mechanic, so he had that entrepreneurial feel as well. So I think happy life, but then a tragic life of having to grow up very quickly.
And so did you feel the pressure, or were you relied upon more if your mum was, you know, trying to get her cleaning venture take off? You had the 2 older brothers. Did you feel the pressure to maybe grow up a bit quicker? Were you self-sufficient at a very young age because you were sort of maybe home alone?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely kind of feel the pressure or the responsibility of keeping the family together. Became really, really close with my mum because of that, because we shared a room together, and as I was growing up, so would have been very supportive of her. Became the kind of stable voice in the house, trying to control my brothers as well, and keep them under control. But we're very, very close. So all the way through our growing up and our married lives, and we still every Saturday meet and as a family and connect. So we grew together more, but also there was that added responsibility to be sensible and not be that wild child.
And so when you were in school, were you a very academic child? Because I know that your career sort of took you to finance and accounting and that sort of stuff. Were you very academically minded?
Not really. I mean, I wouldn't say I loved school. I always did reasonably well. Never failed an exam, but wouldn't have been number 1 in the class either. Always had a very practical side to me. So I think that the analytics and the accounting and maths were something I just found very natural for me. But when I came to the end of secondary school, my real motivation was I wanted to go and get a job to bring money into the house so that my mum could work less. And so college was never on the cards. It wasn't something I even thought about. It was just, how do I get a job and how do I get working faster.
And did you care what kind of job, or like, you know, were you ever looking at what's my career going to be, or was it just I need to bring money home?
I think at that time, not career. It was about, you know, how do I contribute to the family and help my mum. It wasn't I want to have a high flying career in business. So when I left secondary school, I did a secretarial course, and from there went into working with a family run business in Blackrock.
And so what was your gig there? What did you
So
do?
I started out, they were a fast food equipment company. So they sold deep fat fryers and fridges to restaurants. And I started setting up their accounting system. So they were computerizing for the first time. They had got an accounting package, so I had to set up all of their accounts payable and accounts receivable. And my job actually was quite funny, ranged from doing that kind of office setup, administration, to collecting the kids from school, because it was a family and the office was in their house. So if they were stuck, they would say, would you pop down and get the kids from school? To on Saturdays, they had the franchise for Southern Fried Chicken. So all the seasonings that Super Quinn used to buy to put on the Southern Fried Chicken in their stores. So I used to go out on the road and deliver that to Super Quinn on Saturdays. So I mean, one of the good things I reflect back on that is I had an opportunity to learn so much about different aspects of the business.
Yeah.
And then they opened their own fast food restaurant in Dundrum. So I hired the staff for that. I did the payroll for that. I used to go down at lunchtime and flip burgers in the restaurant. I did the cash up for it.
So any job that needed doing, you were there?
I was able to do. So for the first kind of 3 years of my career, I got an opportunity to do everything. And that mentality has kind of stayed with me as I've gone through my career. As there's no job that's not valuable. There's nothing that you wouldn't do.
So you didn't have notions about yourself thinking, oh, well, I'm doing payroll now, so I'm too good to be doing the burgers.
No. For me, it was just how do I learn more? So that kind of growth mindset that Microsoft talks about now, I realised that I had that in my DNA of try new experiences, do new things, learn different aspects of the business.
And given that you were doing 9 to 5 different jobs, was there one in particular that you enjoyed or you looked forward to doing more than the others?
I think the whole accounting side of things and the financial pieces were interesting, dealing with customers. Because before I took that job, my very first job was in a newsagent's when I was 16 in a local shop down in Stillorgan near the bowling alley. And I went in there to earn money because I used to bowl, do Templin bowling. I was on the European youth team for Ireland way back. So I loved interacting with customers. I loved the kind of financial aspects, stock management. So all of that kind of accounting side of things, even though I wouldn't have known it then as being, hey, I want to be an accountant, came very naturally to me. And I think as I went through into my first real job in business, they were the aspects that I enjoyed most. And
so this is probably one of my favourite anecdotes of every person I've ever interviewed. How did you come to work at Microsoft?
So the company I was in, as I said, the motivation for me getting a job was to bring money home. The family business in the mid-80s got into trouble financially, and they hadn't paid me for about 2 months because they couldn't afford to pay me. And I thought, okay, my motivation for working is to try and get money for home, so I need to think about what next, because everybody in that business would have said I'd never leave. They thought, you know, you get on so well with the family, you're connected with their kids, you're here for life. But you also need to look after your own sense of why you're there and what you want next. So I applied for a job in the Evening Herald and got an interview with Mary B. Cremen for a business in Sandyford, and I picked Sandyford because it was close to home. And it was a start-up, in effect, manufacturing company that had aimed to put 100 people in Ireland. And turned out that the company was Microsoft, and at the time I didn't know who they were, as I don't think anybody in Ireland did. And I was employee number 24, and I went in as an accounts clerk. And again, part of one of my early jobs was to go and buy the biscuits for the tea, because we didn't have a canteen or anything there, just a kettle and a desk.
Like, that's a very cool story. So this was 1986.
Yep.
And employee number 24 in a company that has gone on to dominate the entire world. So you went in as you said, employee 24. Were you aware that this could be a career, or was it still just bringing money home?
No, it was a really fun place to work, because back then most of the employees were in their like 21 or below. Okay. It was a manufacturing facility, so we had a lot of people on production line who were teenagers coming out of school, first job, very energetic company. Everything was new because we were a startup. We were trying to figure out how to build that business. So I started in the finance side of things as an accounts clerk, but again I got to do payroll, I got to do accounts payable, all the different aspects of accounting. And I still didn't get that it was going to be a career. It was a company that I enjoyed working for. It was a lot of fun. But I had my first manager in Microsoft who was a real inspiration. And for me, I now realise he was an amazing coach, which I didn't, again, understand the term back then. Yeah. But he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he sat me down and said, you need to go and get a qualification. You should think about going and doing accountancy. And I was saying to him, 5 years, like long college track, I'm not sure that's for me. And he said, hey, there's a new course that's come out. It's an accounting technician course. It's 2 years. Just focus on trying to do that for 2 years and let's see how you go. So I signed up to the course. I came 11th in Ireland in both of my exams in both years. Wow. Which I was quite shocked at. But again, I was working in a finance department, so all of the, whether it was the law side of things, which really interested me, or the business side, seemed to fit with what I was doing, and it made sense to me. So
you had practical examples for the theory that you were learning.
Yeah. And then after I got my exams in year 2 and qualified, he sat me down and said, okay, now you need to think about the next phase, which is going and doing your accountancy exams.
And was that to try and for your betterment? Like, could you have stayed at the level you were at doing what you were doing until the day you die? Was this because, as you say, he saw something in you and he wanted you to achieve the full potential?
Yeah, I think he saw that there was potential there and that I wasn't really reaching that, and he wanted to encourage me and say, hey, listen, as companies scale and grow and as you build your career, having some qualification that will stand to you in the future is something that you should think about. Okay. So went on and did the accountancy exams, did them in 3 years, so very quick period of time. Was in college with people who were getting 3 and 6 months off for their finals, and I got 3 days off for mine. And I passed and they didn't. So it was, again, I think the practical application of what I was learning, I was doing. So it made a lot of sense to me.
But were you stressed out of your bin though? Like, was that like pretty intense? No? No,
and I didn't. And again, back to this thing of liking to be busy and doing lots of things. Okay. Like, I was in college 4 nights a week, every weekend, on top of working and on top of going out with friends and doing all the things you do when you're in your early 20s. So, wow. But I enjoyed it, and I really found I thrived on that learning. Okay.
So you got those exams, you did that in 3 years. Did you then move up in the company? Like, was your qualifications, was it sort of acknowledged within the company and you got to move up?
Yeah, so I started as accounts clerk, and then I went into cost accounting, and then I went into finance supervisor. There was a phase in that where the finance supervisor job came up and I wanted to go for it, and they were saying, oh no, we're really happy with you doing the cost accounting job, you're really good at it. Okay. And I kind of had a discussion with my manager at the time saying, well, you know, if I left the company, you'd have to find somebody to replace me. Why wouldn't you give me the opportunity to stay in the company and do something and progress my career here? Yeah. So I had to put a little bit of pressure on to be considered, and I got the role. But I moved up over the first kind of 10 years of my career in Microsoft through the finance up to leading the finance organisation.
And were you must have been confident in your ability to put yourself forward, because we often hear that, you know, women aren't great at that, you know, putting the pressure on and saying, I can do this, I know I can do this. I
don't think I was confident. I think I got to a point of frustration that kind of, you know, I saw other people moving, and Microsoft was growing 100, 200, 300 people year on year at the time. So we were expanding really well, and I felt I was doing a really good job. And sometimes when you do a really good job, people are comfortable with you doing a really good job. So you have to ask the question around, well, or show a little bit of ambition. So I think that was my first kind of pushing the system a little to say, hey, listen, what about me? So I wouldn't necessarily say I was confident, because shortly after that I got a coach who started working with me on my development. The company had supported doing that. And he would have said that I was very low on the self-confidence and pushing myself scale. But I saw the opportunity and I thought, why everybody else and why not me?
And so as you got more senior, what kind of a leader were you? You know, did that come naturally to you when you had people answering to you?
I think for me it's back to valuing all the jobs, and I think that comes back to my mother, you know, being a cleaner or being, you know, doing the industrial cleaning. A lot of people would look down their nose at that kind of work and say, oh, that's, you know, that's not a career. Whereas I think the values that I have in my leadership came from that grounding of being in a working class family, being prepared myself to do any job. Like in those early days in Microsoft, I worked on the production line at Christmas when we had product to get out. I did relief at reception for people for lunch breaks. So again, that ethos of try everything, learn everything, and no job is too beneath you. Was part of the value system I had, and that's what I brought into the leadership. I was prepared at month end, when everybody was under pressure to get work done, to go out with my team, sit down and do the work with them, because I'd done all of the jobs over the 10 years. Yeah. So rolling up your sleeves, getting involved, connecting with people and supporting them was kind of my early ethos in managing team.
You also then had, I think the most slight way I can put it is a health wobble.
Yes. When
you were incredibly young.
Yeah.
What age were you?
I was 32 at the time, and I'd moved on to operations, and I was doing a global role at the time and was traveling a huge amount, and had started a fitness regime and thought I need to exercise more and go to the gym, and started lifting weights and all sorts of things. And I was in the shower one morning and found a lump, and said it to my husband, and at the time I had a 2-year-old child, so my daughter was just a small toddler, so there was a lot going on in life, and he was saying to me, listen, you probably pulled a muscle, you know, doing in the gym, so just keep an eye on it, don't get overly panicked. But after a couple of days I was going, okay, this isn't going away and it just doesn't feel kind of right. So I went to my GP. They sent me immediately, he was amazing, sent me immediately down to Vincent's, had a scan, mammogram, whatever, and within 10 days had been told I had breast cancer and that they were going to take me in and do surgery.
So when you hear the word cancer and you have a 2-year-old kid at home and you're only 32 yourself?
Yeah, a bit scary.
Yeah.
But also kind of, my mentality is always glass half full. So, and once you know something, you can do something about it. So it's, again, a very practical way of approaching everything. So I approached that the same way. I had, as I said, a great GP. He was so funny because he was trying to get me into hospital to get the surgery done. And he was saying to me, listen, I have a brother who's the surgeon who'll just take it out if we have to. It was like a mechanic that down the road who'll go and just get it out to at least get to that point. Yeah. So as I said, within 10 days I was in. And I don't think at the time, when I went in for the surgery, I'd never been in hospital before in my life. I'd never had anything wrong. So I don't think it hit me until I was lying in the hospital bed the night before surgery and the priest came round to bless me. And I kind of thought, oh my God. Wow. The realisation hit me of this is actually something fairly serious, and maybe I won't come out of this. But then I did the surgery, started chemotherapy, and did radiotherapy. So I had about 10 months of treatment, lost the hair, all of the drama of all the things that happened with that. But again, approached it, my family would say they would never have got through it unless I had been so positive, which was, this is just something I have to get done. Okay. We will go through the process, we'll take the advice of the experts, we'll do whatever treatment they tell you to do, and it'll be okay. Then I spent 10 years of going in for scans and, you know, every 6 months doing the checkups, going to the oncologist, and every year you go in with the terrified feeling that they're going to tell you that it's back. And then at the end of the 10 years, they asked me to go and do the gene test. Okay, yeah. And it was unusual because I didn't have the there's 50 different types of breast cancer. I didn't know that at the time. I had gone through a phase early on of, oh, I'll give up everything, all dairy, all meat products, to go on a strict diet. And then I thought my life will be really short if I can't do anything that I enjoy. So took a more practical approach to saying, okay, let's try and get, say, reasonably healthy, eat healthy, exercise. But you always have that fear of it'll return. And after 10 years, my oncologist said, hey, listen, we've done a lot more research now into breast cancer. And I'm going to send you, even though we have no history in your family, my mum she had a lot of brothers. My dad had 15 brothers. Wow. So there was no women in the family as such to see was there a history of breast cancer in the family. But I had no history of anybody dying of breast cancer. Lots of family members died of heart attacks. So he said, I'm going to send you for this gene test, but I don't expect anything. So again, I went into the gene test on my own. They had the counselling session, got the bloods done, and then went back to collect the results on my own, not believing there would be anything wrong, and then was told that I had the BRCA1 gene, which was like another big shock to the system. So you have two risks with that: one, ovarian cancer, and two, breast cancer repeat. And if you get a repeat breast cancer, which there's an 80% chance that I would, the likelihood of them being able to you recover from that, or me recover from that, would be lower than it was first time around. So 2 years ago I had the preventative surgery, so I had done mastectomy done 2 years ago, and I'd had ovarian surgery about 5 years ago. So yeah, it's been a trek.
What age were you then at that stage?
42, I'm trying to remember now, 42, 45. And
then obviously your daughter would have been growing up alongside you as well. So
yeah, that's the first thing that you kind of think about is, okay, what about her and what's the implications for her? And again, the oncologist at the time was great to say, hey, listen, we're progressing research so rapidly in this area. By the time has any need to worry about this, who knows what the treatment or the prevention will be. You can't take it with your lens because the research is so phenomenal. So she's now 19. She can be tested from now, but they actually wouldn't do any preventative screening or anything until she's 30.
Okay.
So she's lots of time to consider whether she needs to be tested or not. And there is, of course, a 50-50 chance that she won't have it, because my husband's genes could be stronger. And
so, as I say, you went through the surgery. So what's the status now? Are you...
Yeah, fully... I don't have to go back for screening all the time. I'll go and touch base with my surgeon rather. I'm signed off from the oncologist.
Okay.
So it's more now about normal life.
That's good to hear. This is a health journey then that started for you with 32.
Yeah.
But at 32 you were in one position. Now you're the MD of Microsoft, having gone through all of that.
Yeah.
Did you ever think, I'm going to take my foot off the gas in terms of career and just focus on my health and my child?
Well, interesting, when I got the cancer diagnosis first, it was an interesting time in Microsoft because the managing director of the operations centre, which is where I was working, was leaving and leaving Microsoft, and he was being replaced by a gentleman from the US. So for me, it's a really funny time in your life because you've got this diagnosis, you have a boss that you've never met before, you're ambitious in your career and want to do well. So it was a difficult time in that transition. So I went and spoke to the new boss just after I'd been diagnosed and said, hey, listen, I'm going to have to go through treatment. I'm going to have to take time out to do that. But I'd like to continue working because I could do projects. I may not be able to be in every day, but I don't know how the treatment's going to affect me.
Yeah.
And he was interesting. His approach was, if you're not here 150% of the time, I don't want you here at all. Which I thought was a very shocking response to somebody going through a significant life-changing incident. So he didn't want me in the office and basically said, stay off till you're healthy.
Jeez.
Now, you could look at that and say he was being empathetic and saying stay
for your well-being.
For your well-being, get well, don't be worrying about work, just go and do what you need to do to get well and then come back and talk to us.
Yeah.
But for me, on the receiving side of it was, you're totally cut off from this part of your life that you had been doing for years and being really busy and really successful in, into this unknown health scare, but also an unknown work environment. So when I went back after that, I really did think about whether Microsoft was the place for me, and whether I should think about doing something different. And I didn't really know whether I was going to be better or not. So there's that uncertainty of, well, what's life like after cancer, and how are you going to cope with that? So I went back, and strangely, I took a global job.
Okay, so you didn't take your foot off the gas.
Didn't take a foot off the gas. Took on a global job because I think I wanted to prove to him and to me more than anything, that I was better, and that I could do something as big as I had done before and still have impact. So I took on the global role, but I also decided to go into a coaching path to build some skills that if I did decide that I couldn't work at the pace I used to work, that I would have an alternative tool in my toolkit. Okay. So I did psychometric testing and qualified for that, occupational testing to see how teams work, and then I qualified as an executive coach. Set up my own business because it's part of the coaching qualification, you had to do that. Started doing some coaching outside of Microsoft because you need to look at other industries, and as part of your qualification know that you can coach in other environments. So did all of that while I was working in this global role.
And so when did you go from your global role and the coaching to where you are today? Like, how long of a period are we talking about, and what were the steps?
So I think I did the global role, and then I got asked to go in and do a turnaround. We had acquired Great Plains, Exacta, Navision, the kind of Dynamics business, the ERP and CRM parts of our company. And product portfolio. We had acquired that and integrated into operations, and the whole thing fell apart. It was an absolute disaster. So I got asked to go and turn the business around in Europe and then take on the global team. So that was a fascinating kind of 4 years after me coming back I spent a year doing this global role, and then I got asked to take on this turnaround business, which was a phenomenal experience. Did that role for 4 years, and then I went in and ran the operations center in EMEA, and I had 2 global teams as well. So I had a bigger footprint, about 600-700 people working in Japan, Singapore.
And did that not ever go through your brain of, holy Jesus, I'm just back from having, a serious health issue, and now I'm taking on so much responsibility, working with people in pretty much every time zone. I need to watch myself?
No, I think I just kind of put it into the moving on. Like, it was a period of about 8 years of just building my career again, building my reputation. I mean, there was so many learnings for me as a leader, and for people generally that I share in that period. The cancer bit was a part of that. The learning of, when my new boss that I went back to, I had to rebuild a relationship. I had to prove myself from scratch again. He didn't know me from Adam. He hadn't seen my first 15 years in Microsoft and the trajectory I'd had. So I was starting again with him. And when it came to his time to move back to Seattle, the job, the head of operations job, was given to a peer of mine. And not me, and I was quite shocked at that, because I'd been the longest tenured person, I'd probably a proven track record. So I sat down with him and said, like, why didn't I get the job, or why didn't I even get interviewed for the job? Yeah. And he said, you never asked. And it was a real learning for me I expected, if I worked really hard, because my history in Microsoft had been work really hard, prove yourself, and then somebody sees that and promotes you to the next level. I never had a proactive career plan that I was going, okay, I want to go to this job next and this job next. I just fell in for the first kind of 15 years of my career, just fell role after role after role, and got more and more opportunity. Yeah. So this was the first time where I just got the shock of, I didn't get the job. And then realizing, well, I hadn't actually asked for the job, and actually this guy that was my peer had been really articulate on, that's the job I want, here's what I'm going to do to get it, and had been working towards that, and I was oblivious to it. So that was a big shift and change for me. And so I was ready for the next time that job came up, that I was going to be the person in that job, and I was much more articulate about head of operations, and I'd spent 17 of my 27 years at that time in Microsoft in operations. I of course wanted the head of operations job, and I got it that time. So I spent about 4 years in that. And so I'd done 27 years in Microsoft, never really looked back on the health scare, just kept focused on the work and the impact and the opportunity of making a difference. And at the end of that time, then I decided it was time to leave Microsoft. My mum had passed away.
Okay.
She was a year gone, and I just kind of went, you know, I need time out. I need to go and spend time with family, give myself a chance to do whatever it is I want to do. Didn't know what that was at the time. And I was on the succession plan for this role, the managing director role for Ireland. But I looked at the role in a very practical way and said, okay, it's part of the job is running a sales function, and I'm not a salesperson. That's not in my DNA. And then I also said, hey, listen, Ireland's in recession back 6 years ago. The last leader of that function, Paul Rellis, had come from operations and finance, and I was operations and finance. And I was going, I really think they need a salesperson to go in and build the business back up again. And so I discounted myself without ever talking to anybody, said, okay, that's not the job for me. I'm making my decision, I'm going to leave. And I handed in my notice to leave Microsoft. And within a week, I got a call from our president of Microsoft International, Jean-Philippe Courtois. He called me and he said, listen, what on earth are you doing? You know, you're on the succession plan for this role. We really want you to do that job. And at the time, I didn't know Paul was moving on to a new role, so I had no visibility to that. And I said to him, you know, my logic, you need a salesperson for that job. I've done all the psychometric testing over the year. I know that sales isn't part of my DNA. Country's been in recession, you need somebody that can really drive it out. And he said to me, you know what, Cathriona, there's a couple of things. Company's going to go through a massive transformation. So he obviously knew Steve Ballmer had handed in his notice. We were going to be replacing him with a new CEO. He had line of sight to this change for the company, and the culture change is going to come. You have a track record at transformational leadership and growing senior leaders in the company. You've done it from manufacturing into operations, into all of the the internet boom and bust. You've gone through all of that, and you've proven that you are a leader that can manage through change. So we need somebody who can do that. And then the other thing he said to me, which I thought was the clincher, was, you know, Ireland is 4% of Western Europe's revenue. If you screw it up, who cares? You know, and I thought I thought that was a very empowering thing for him to say.
Yeah.
He wasn't undermining the entity that is the sales team in Ireland, but he was kind of saying, what are you worried about? You know, it's not going to have an impact on the company, but hey, you might enjoy it. So I thought about it and went back to him and said, hey, I need some time off. So he said, how much time? Which I thought, again, was another great thing for a leader to say. So I took 3 months at the time, and I went back into that job with a total clear mind of, it was like a new company, new job, new me, go in and approach it. And my husband and I had talked about, well, you know, if after 6 months you hate it, you know, all you have to do is leave, because you've already taken that, because it was huge turmoil for me to say I was going to leave Microsoft.
I'd say just the emotional side of things. When you've been somewhere for such a long time, it becomes a huge part of your identity, and there is that emotional connection to the brand and to all that stuff, which shouldn't be there, but happens over 27 years.
It kind of shapes you and who you are, and you think that that's who you are, and that you can so connected with the company. So to have made that decision to say I was going to leave was such a big thing. It would come easier after that if I really didn't enjoy what I was going to do. So he said, and my husband was great at kind of coaching me into, are you leaving the company, or are you leaving 17 years of operations and you feel like you've done everything you could do? And I went, don't think I'm giving up on the company just yet. So I have to say this has been the most amazing job I've ever had. I love it. It is probably one of the best jobs in the company. I'm managing director for Ireland, which means I represent all of the footprint that is here, whether it's data centre, engineering, inside sales, operations. So the breadth of understanding of the company and being able to be the face of that into the market, working with government, working with industry bodies has been amazing. And then I'm site leader internally, so being able to bring the employees together and to move into our beautiful new campus and see the impact that that's had on really embracing the culture change that we've had has been fantastic. So it's been a great 6 years of
And do you
career.
still enjoy it today as much as you did on day one?
Absolutely love it, because there's so much change going on.
Okay.
As I said, the company you see now is not the company 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and we're only on that journey. We're still beginning to learn. And the bit that I really love most is there's so much happening in the Irish market, and so many companies are curious about what's happened with Microsoft. Like, how did you do that culture change for a company with 110,000 employees with a global footprint? Like, it's a Harvard business case. So people are curious about that, because every company in Ireland that's going on that digital journey know that the biggest part of that is the culture change that they're going to have to make. And sharing our experience with them and helping them start that journey is incredible. And as I said, we're only on the starting point of that. There's so much opportunity and so much more impact that I can have and the team can have, that it really is an exciting time to be part of it.
You also give back into the community quite a bit.
Yes.
So the last time I was out in the new Microsoft building, I was there in the Dream Space, which is run by an incredible young woman called Amanda. And I think it was transition year students were learning how to use different aspects of technology, whether it is AI, and understanding what AI actually is. Why do you open the doors to schools and give your teams time to do stuff like that?
Yeah. So we know that only 30% of the ICT workforce across all of Europe are women. So we've always had this focus on how do we encourage more, both in Ireland, both male and female, to consider STEM subjects. So over the years, we've always done Internet Safety Day or Coder Dojo, are real advocates for. But we saw the campus and building out the campus that we had a real opportunity to build a space that we could bring students into to experience technology. And we called it Dream Space because it's allowing them to dream about the future and to think about how do they build the skills around collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking, to help them dream about how technology is going to impact them. And we've done a really interesting thing, I think, is we haven't set it up as a place to code. We've set it up so that we can show students how technology is going to be used in sport, in design, in art, in music. So it depends on where they're coming from and what they think their career is going to be, but educating them that technology is going to be part of that, and therefore they should be embracing that technology. So we focus on two cohorts. One is primary school children, 5th and 6th class, because we find at 11 years of age a lot more girls are interested in technology. So we're trying to capture them at that age and give them an experience that will open their minds to the potential of technology. And then we go back again at transition year, as you say, to meet the students where they're at as they're starting to think about their college choices and what types of career they're going to have. We want to expose them to the technology and show them how that's going to change the world, and help them consider that those STEM subjects are important. And it's all about trying to pipeline in the early stages students into technology-like industries.
So from a business point of view, is this kind of ticking a CSR box, or is it, as you say, trying to line up the next wave of engineers or whatever?
No, for us it's not about the CSR box. We do lots of charitable work with Enable Ireland on accessibility, but this is more about how do we shift the dial on pipelining talent for the future and getting people excited about what it would be like to be in the tech industry.
And so does the term role model sit easily on your shoulders?
Yeah, it does now. I mean, I have to say, a number of years ago, I was asked to kind of head up the diversity and inclusion initiative for Microsoft in Ireland. And at that stage, I was a little reluctant to do it because I kind of felt it was, oh, you're the token woman being asked to go up as the poster child. And it didn't feel good for me and I hesitated. But actually, the more I thought it through, the more important it is for people to see role models. And I look at my background and my steps through my career, and it's not standard, it's different. And I think you have to tell that story. So for students who are not 100% academic and are really clear on what their path is, showing them somebody who didn't go to university, who didn't take the normal path and still has had a very successful career, I think is a good thing to do. So it's better now than it did before.
Well, it is an awesome story. I'm delighted you came in to share it with us. Thank you so much for your time.